I'd love to just talk about that first area that I served in called El Melon. Tiny town, I would say maybe 1,000 people in the area kind of where we lived, and a little more when you kind of went out to the outskirts of the area. But there were a few paved roads, but a lot of the roads that people lived on where the homes were all dirt roads. Interestingly, there were kind of metal fences and gates around most of the homes, and so rather than knocking on doors, we would typically go knock on fences. We'd either have a ring or a rock, and we'd kind of knock on them, and sometimes, we'd shout, "Hello!" And that's kind of how people would know someone was at their door, rather than like a doorbell. The people there are a lot of people that worked in the fields, in the mines, a lot of, manual physical labor, and it was a very kind of rural type community, again, it was kind of a culture shock because growing up in Utah, I was so close to Salt Lake City, and people worked in the city, and we worked with computers, and we worked with all these gadgets and things, and that just wasn't as much a part of life in this little city called El Melon. And I came to love that about it, is that they weren't so connected to their things and their computers and their devices, but they were connected to people. And the people would go to work, working, in the field or in the school or wherever, and then they'd come home and they'd be with their families rather than go throw on their earbuds and go sit in their room and be on their phones or whatever. And I loved that kind of change in focus for me. It was a great way to start my mission, to realize if I kind of unplugged from that side of the world and met people and got to know their feelings and whatnot, it would be a much more successful time, and it was because of that. But yeah, tiny little town. The transportation, they had these things called micros, which were like little buses, and if you wanted to travel to one side of the city or the other, you'd get a little micro, and they'd give you a little ticket, and you hop on, and we did a lot of fun talking to people on these little buses. They also had little taxis, but micros were a little bit more economical and whatnot. And on P days, when we'd want to go buy our groceries, we'd have to go to the city next door, and so that was a little bit longer of a bus ride, get our stuff at this little shopping grocery store type place, come back. Again, not a whole lot of not a city in the sense of Salt Lake, Denver, Chicago, New York, LA, like that kind of downtown type city. Much more like you'd think in a farm type place, downtown Lehigh, Utah, or something like that. The construction was older, and so yeah, it was a definite change for me, but I loved that. The weather, the time of the year that I got there, it was kind of the winter time, and in my mission, the winter just meant a little bit of rain. It's pretty beautiful all year round, and so I remember there being a lot of rain, but in terms of the day, it was pretty comfortable most of the time. It got a little chilly at nighttime, but that was one thing I loved, just kind of on a side note about my mission, was that it was just beautiful all the time. And again, during the winter, it would rain a little bit, and otherwise it was just kind of perfect weather, and so it was really beautiful that way. And so besides the little rain, we didn't have a lot of weather problems that we had to deal with, besides just going out and feeling hot because we were knocking on doors all day. So